Greetings and welcome. My name is Mike Bankhead. I am your host. I am a bass player and songwriter from the Jam City, Dayton, Ohio. This is episode 119, and my guest is Carolyn Shulman, a folk and Americana singer-songwriter out of Denver, Colorado, who recently released her latest album called Heart on a Wire. We are going to get deep into that album and some other things on the You Could Be My Aramis podcast. Carolyn spent a large portion of her life as a lawyer, or lawyer, depending on what regional accent you have here in the United States. Yeah, find out more about her starting now. Hey there, Carolyn.
Hey, Mike. How's it going?
I'm all right. I'm tired. How are you?
I'm good. I am slowly caffeinating here.
Slowly caffeinating. It is still morning for you
It
because
is.
you do not live in the Eastern time zone. Where exactly is it that you live?
I'm in
Okay,
Denver,
not your
Colorado.
address. Denver, Colorado.
No.
Okay. The Mile High City.
Indeed. Oh, I hope the mic picked up that slurp. That'll be good for your podcast.
No, slurps are great. And if it doesn't sound cool, I could always edit it out because that's what the edit button is for. So, like most of my guests, you are a musician, and
Yes.
the folks listening cannot see the Telecaster behind you, but there is a Telecaster behind you, which leads me to believe that you play guitar.
I do. That is my primary instrument. I've played guitar since I was a kid. Started taking lessons when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. But oddly, like my teacher, the way she instructed was not, I didn't really learn much theory. She really taught me how to play by ear, which has been a super useful skill, of course. But, in some ways, I wish I had learned more music theory. And I have, like, as the years have gone by, I've picked up a lot of it through my own, devices. But yeah.
It's not too late.
No, it's never too late.
From the time you started learning guitar to the time that you were writing your own songs, how long did that take you?
Yeah, so like I said, I started playing guitar around the age of 9. And then I would say I wrote my first song when I was 13 or 14. Yeah, so yeah, 13 or 14, I guess, wrote my first song and really it was more instrumental. And then I started writing lyrics. Yeah.
How long after that to your first release?
I was 40 when I released my first anything. Yeah.
That's that shows some stick-to-itiveness because, and we did not. I didn't know I was going to mention this, but I think it says on your website, so I think it's okay. You are a lawyer.
Oh yeah, we can totally
went,
talk about that.
You went into like professional land for a while, and
Right.
then came back to music.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I played music all through high school and college and gigged a lot during those years. And then when I went to law school, I just didn't have time anymore to keep gigging. And I went to law school because, so like when I was graduating college, I felt like I was deciding between three different paths. And I remember distinctly having this conversation with my dad. Well, I guess both my parents were probably on the phone. And and I was trying to decide between trying to make a go of music professionally full time versus law school versus going to grad school and getting a PhD in religious studies, which is what I had majored in undergrad. Not because I'm particularly religiously observant, but because I was fascinated by religion and how it impacts so many other things in the world. My dad just said to me, well, whatever you do, you just have to be on your own health insurance. because
Music's out.
yeah, because I was about to like get kicked off of his or whatever. Maybe I had already been kicked off of his or whatever. And so yeah, that's literally how I made that decision. I was like, well, what's the most stable of these options, the most likely to land me a job when I'm done? And law school was, and I also felt like I could do the most good in the world with a law degree. Like at the time, that was how I felt. Because there's so much you can do with a law degree. It's not just straight law practice. There are a lot of other things. And sure enough, I mean, my first 2 years out of law school, I did commercial litigation, and I was miserable and I hated it. It was really not, I mean, it was interesting, I guess, and I was good at it, but I hated my job. And I didn't really like that. I didn't really fit in with that world of attorneys who were more aggressive and competitive, even within the same law firm sometimes. I left the world of commercial litigation and switched gears and started doing Social Security disability law. And that was a much, much better fit for me in every way. I really enjoyed the other attorneys I worked with in my law firm. They were great, really kind-hearted people. And it felt more like we were on a team and not competing with each other. And I felt like I was doing a really good thing for my clients in helping them get disability benefits, because these were folks who had physical and or mental impairments and were no longer able to work. And the government denied their claims for Social Security disability benefits, which happens to, I want to say, at least like 60% of claims that get filed get denied.
Whoa.
Just, yeah, it's really, I mean, when the government gets these cases, they're not exactly giving each one its due consideration. And also, like, if people are filing, getting off on a tangent, but like if people are
Tangents are
filing,
good. They're
yeah,
interesting.
if people are filing a claim on their own and not using an attorney until they get to the appeals stage, which is how most people, when most people file, hire an attorney for this, they're not necessarily getting all of their own medical records and filing them in the case. So they're just more likely to get denied until you get someone on your side helping you obtain all your medical records and like sift through and see which ones are good to submit and, you know, which ones really prove your case. So yeah, I liked that job, and for multiple reasons. I liked feeling like I was doing a good thing for people who really needed some help. And it was interesting to like read medical records. You know, I was basically spent my whole day like reading people's medical records. And so I learned a lot about a variety of medical conditions, and I learned a lot of medical jargon. And I'm married to a doctor, so I sort of have my own at-home in-house medical expert I could consult when I had
Nice.
questions about things.
Did all
But
that reading make you a hypochondriac?
I was already a hypochondriac.
Oh, then
Yeah.
you're probably just extra ammo.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
how did you get back into music then?
I got back into music when my family and I moved to Denver. So I had been living in Houston, Texas. That's where I went to college and law school and practiced as an attorney. And then we moved out to Colorado because my husband got recruited for a job out here. So I took some time off, mainly because I had to get licensed out here with to practice if I wanted to practice law. And I did that. I got my license here in Colorado. But I never went back into law practice because I realized when we moved and I was taking this time off to kind of help our family get settled and get my license in order and stuff, we all kind of realized how much happier I was and our whole household was with me not practicing law. Even though I was doing something I liked. I mean, it was basically like a 50, 60 hour a week job.
Mm.
And my husband's job is also pretty demanding. And we had a young daughter at the time. She was like 15 months old when we moved. And so, you know, we made a decision as a family that I was going to stay home for a while and not go back into a traditional, you know, law practice job. And that was great. So I would say I started getting back into music at that point because I had more time and sort of mental space for it. And then the real catalyst that got me to where I was really writing more was when one of my best friends, her name is Jen Hitt, we went to college together and we sang together a lot in college. We played basically as a duo a whole lot in college. And she and her partner, Mike, moved out here. I mean, his name is Mike. um,
He is tastefully named.
yes, indeed. They moved out here, and so Jen and I started playing music together again. And we started meeting up on a weekly basis just for fun. And then we started getting some gigs. And that whole thing got me writing again. And before I knew it, I had written enough songs to record a full album. And that was a dream of mine for my whole life, was to record my own music, release it. And I was finally at a point in my life where I had sort of the wherewithal, the time, and the resources to do it. So I did. And I did it as a solo project. And Jen sings all over it, but it was released just as me solo.
And
Um,
that's Grenadine and Kerosene, that one?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I remember that one. I listened to it not recently, but when it came out, yeah.
Yeah, that was so kind of you. You gave a really nice review. I appreciated that so much.
Well, it was the truth. I wouldn't, well, if I didn't like it, I probably would have said it, but I would have found a nicer way to say it. So you're still kind of, you took a long break. So as a musician and artist, you're probably still experiencing some growth. What does it look like for you when it's time to write? So it's you have this time set aside and you're gonna go ahead and do some composition, some lyric writing. What's the first tool you reach for?
Oh, definitely my guitar. I mean, it's also kind of different every time. And as you know, because you're also a songwriter, I'm sure this happens to you too, where I might be driving in the car or sitting in the pickup line to pick up my daughter from school, and a lyric idea hits me or a melody comes to mind. And so that's when I reach for my phone and either record something into the voice memos or, type something into the notes app, and hope I come back to it later. I don't always do it. And I feel like everyone I know has this, where you have like all these little pieces
Oh yeah.
of melody and lyric buried in your phone, some of which we never come back to. But at least it's captured. And, if it's a really good thing that really lights me up, I'll come back to it when I get home or whatever. And I am not as disciplined as many artists. I don't, and maybe I should. I don't really set aside a special time every day or every week or whatever, specifically for writing. For a while, Jen hit and I started a song circle here in Denver of just sort of buddies of ours who are also great songwriters. And we would meet once a month. And at the end of each meeting, we would play new work for each other or old work, and get constructive feedback from one another on our
That's
stuff.
super useful.
It's awesome. I love doing it. And we've taken a break because I didn't have time to mess with it when I was in the release process. But I'm looking forward to reconvening it soon. But at the end of each meeting, we would offer a song prompt. And so that's a really helpful thing that would often get me writing. And so I was definitely more disciplined about sitting down and writing a song based around the prompt because I wanted to have something to share at the next get together.
Yeah, that's a very simple way to say that if you had some accountability, right? Like you had
Yes.
people that you gotta do it or else I won't have anything, which is
That's
a great
right.
motivator.
Yeah, exactly.
So the new record is called Heart on a Wire.
Yeah.
And for you folks who are listening who like music, I know that there's a lot of you out there who don't pay any attention to lyrics and you just listen to the instrumentation or melody. That would not be a good way to approach this record because while the songs and the melodies are very pleasant, Carolyn has stuff to say, and you're not going to know what she has to say unless you actually pay attention to the lyrics. It seems like the lyrics are something that a lot of it came from a deep personal place. Like it seems like you had stuff you wanted to get off your chest. Am I right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Do you have a favorite song on the record, or are they all your babies and you can't pick?
I maybe I shouldn't say this, but I do. The title track is probably my favorite. I really love that one.
That's a good song. It's a good way to like open up the record and give us all of the instrumentation textures that we're going to hear as the record goes on. I have
Mhm.
a couple of favorites, but there's a couple that I want to talk to you about, and I'm going to go backwards.
Sure.
Uh, Eye to Eye sounds
Mm,
like it's a reaction to how polarized public discourse in the United States is.
yes, nailed it.
But you were being
That's
really nice about it.
in the song?
Yeah.
A little bit. I mean, I don't know. I feel like verse two gets a little, you know, there are a couple lines in verse two where I say, we draw blood with a sharp sound bite,
Yep.
dodging bullet points from the left and right. That's one of my favorite like lyric lines in the whole record.
That's one of
Yeah.
mine too. That's that one. I was listening to it while I had another screen up because I multitask, and that line made me stop the other screen, go back, and then replay the verse. So
Nice.
yeah, like oh, that was good. And I feel like this is not the only place in the world. The country that we live in is not the only place where people have there's this polarizing public discourse is what we know because we live here and we're absorbed in it. But that's kind of a universal lyric.
Yeah.
Little reprieve also sounds like a slice of life. Like I could just imagine this is a good songwriter thing. Like you're basically painting pictures for us of what your day looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, that was inspired by a bad day. Yeah, I
Did it
really
feel
did.
better? Did it feel better once you got that out? Is the
Oh,
question.
for sure. Yeah. And that one actually came about because I did a songwriting workshop, a Zoom songwriting workshop. This was like during the height of the pandemic when we weren't getting together with anyone in person. And um, it was with my instructors were Jonathan Bird and Jess Klein, who are two great songwriters. And we did an exercise that was like a stream of consciousness journaling sort of exercise. Just write everything that comes to mind on a page. And then afterwards, we kind of read through what we had written and highlighted certain bits that might be interesting to write a song around. And gosh, now I don't even don't even remember what the bit was now that prompted the song, now that I said all this, but I had just had a crappy day that day and I was super like in my head and anxious about it. So that was what everything on my page was about. And so that's sort of how the song was born.
And that one kind of has a very light, like kind of I don't want to say almost cheeky air to it. Like
Hmm.
it doesn't sound as serious as how bad the day you're describing is, which is kind of a
Yeah.
nifty little songwriting trick, right?
Yeah.
To
Well,
to
also, I mean, the day, I don't know, like the reality, and some of it's true and some of it's fiction, but it wasn't like the worst day in the world. It was just kind of a, an average bad day.
Sunflower seeds. I'm that one sad for obvious reasons.
Mm.
Uh, Another current event, topical song.
I guess I felt a connection to that because my dad's side of the family, the Shulman side, came from the exact region in Ukraine that's under attack. About 100 years ago, came to the
Wow,
United States.
Shulman
Yeah.
doesn't sound like a Ukrainian name.
I mean, it's a Jewish name, so um, I mean, Jews sort of tend to have last names that are distinctly Jewish. Not always, but yeah, because we all originally came from a different part of the world.
This is
But
true.
yeah,
So your family has actually roots in that region. That makes sense. That watching those kind of things on television might speak to you a little bit more personally.
a little bit. I mean, like I said, they've been out of there for 100 years, so not not super connected, but still felt something, when I and also like war is terrible in
It is
general,
terrible.
and
Innocent people
um,
suffer everywhere it
yeah,
happens.
yeah. So yeah, when that was dominating the headlines, writing a song helped me process how I was thinking and feeling about it, and I thought it might resonate with other people too.
On Call My Heart Home, I like the way you wrote that one because that could be about your husband or it could be about your kid, but there's nothing that tells us which one it is. And I'm not going to make you say it if you don't want to, but I thought that was a nice way to write the song.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. That actually, like, you have no idea how much that means to me because, so I did write it with my relationship with my daughter in mind. And my producer recommended that I cut a verse that made it very clear that it was a mother-daughter song. Um, because he said, uh, for people who don't have kids, this might not resonate as much. But if you take this out, it makes it more universal. It could be any relationship that involves unconditional love. And I was like, oh, I really resisted it at first because, it's like no one wants to kill their darlings, as we say in the songwriting world.
Yep.
And I really liked that verse. But I felt like I had some clever turns of phrase. But I cut it, and I think it was totally the right move. And it has made the song, I think, more approachable for more people.
It made me pay more attention. And I'm going to go super songwriter nerdy here. It's hard to write love songs because there's so many of them.
So true. Yeah.
And so, how do you? There's nothing really new to say because the experiences that we have, other people have had them. The feelings that we have for the people in our life, other people have had them. So, how do you make it sound fresh, interesting, and not make a listener go, "It's another love song"? Right? Um,
Right.
as a writer myself, I think that's really hard.
Totally.
Which is why I liked what you did with this song, because as I got into it, I was like, oh, this is really ambiguous about who this could be about,
Hmm.
which is really cool. But now you spilled it. It's about your daughter. Does your daughter know that song's about her?
Yes, definitely.
How does she feel about it?
Oh, she loves it. She really likes that. So like she'll get a little shy, if I play it and she's in the audience. But sometimes I hear her humming it like in the shower. And that's really flattering, and sweet. But yeah, I definitely like intend it I hope that it resonates with people, for all kinds of reasons, not necessarily in a parent-child scenario.
I think it will. I think it will if people actually, actually pay attention to the lyrics. And then the last one I wanted to mention specifically was All Burned Out because I think a lot of us have been there before.
Oh yeah.
Exactly what you're describing, the doom scrolling and there's just nothing, there's just no good news anywhere. And you really don't need to spend that long on social media, but for some reason you just keep on. Yeah, I felt that one.
Yeah. That is my social media burnout song for sure. And I'm the worst. Like I really get even with all the protective features that you can now put on like your Instagram where a thing comes up and says you've spent your allowed time today, your time limit's up, and you just hit ignore and it's terrible.
Yep.
Ugh, I don't know why I do this to myself. I don't know.
So Heart on a Wire, pretty confessional, all in all. If we take the whole record, even though the subject matter goes different places, it feels like we're getting to know the real Carolyn if we pay attention to this record. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, yeah, hopefully. I mean, I try to be authentic and put a lot of myself into my songwriting. Even if I'm writing a story about someone else. Um, yeah, definitely a little window into my soul.
So I want to talk about how you created the record because we are both solo artists who play one instrument. I play an instrument and a half, but I don't really play
Same, yeah.
like, but like we're solo artists, but we both like the arrangements are not a one person arrangement on the records that we make, and there's nothing wrong with that. Solo acoustic piano or guitar records are fantastic, but
Hmm.
this is more fleshed out. You've got a whole lot of folks in there helping you play another instrument. You've got backing vocals. So I want to know, how does a song for you go from I just wrote this on my acoustic guitar to I have this full arrangement? What does that process look like when
Yeah,
you're
that's a
doing it?
great question. Well, the building up of a song like that for for a studio production starts with taking the song to my producer. For both of my albums, I've worked with a fantastic producer who's also a folk singer-songwriter himself. His name is John McVeigh, and he's up in Longmont, Colorado, which is like an hour north of Denver. His studio is called Cinder Sound Studio. So when I have a batch of songs that I'm ready to record, I go up to Longmont and I sit down with John and I play the songs for him. And we usually start with a scratch demo, which is where it's just basic acoustic guitar and vocal. And then we go from there and talk about how we want to color the rest of the song. Does this song call for drum? Like it's always a question of what is the song wanting? What is the song calling for? Do we want a full drum kit on this? Do we want electric bass versus upright bass? Do we want keys? If so, do we want, organ versus like synth versus piano? Do we want backing vocals? And so usually after the scratch demo, the next step is typically to do what John calls basics, which is drums and bass. And then after that, it's like, oh, that's really the backbone, right? You get your rhythm section in there. And then we'll come in and fill in with keys. And we had John has a guy that he loves to work with on a regular basis named Eric Moon, who has played with like Jill Sobule. Like he was a regular fixture in her band for a while because she's from Denver.
I did not know that. She's really
Yeah.
nice. I met her once.
Yeah, she doesn't live here anymore, but she does come back from time to time. He's played with a whole bunch of people though. He's kind of a wizard on the keys. He can play any key instrument and he's really good at it. So he played organ, accordion, piano, synths. He's awesome. And then after keys, we usually put in some electric guitar or additional guitars, mandolin, if we want that, banjo, like on a couple songs on this record. And then usually we'll do final vocals sometime after that. So yeah, the scratch demo, we usually end up scrapping the vocal track that I've done on the scratch demo and try to get something better in there. And if I need to re-record my guitar part, I will, but often I get that right on not the first take, but on the scratch demo. Usually we keep the guitar a lot of times. Yeah, so after we get the final vocals all done, then we come in and do backing vocals. And so John has some vocalists that he likes to work with, and then I brought in my friend Jen Hitt to sing on some songs. Yeah, that's kind of how it goes. And then so after all the tracking is done, John is sort of a triple threat because he does the production, he's also the engineer, and he also does all the mixing. And he's amazing at all of it. So he will start on mixes and he'll send me a first round of mixes. I'll get back to him with feedback on, anything I want to tweak. He'll send me a second round, and usually round 2 is pretty close, if not finished. And then maybe we'll do a round 3 on some songs that needed a little more tweaking, or maybe he hears something on an additional listen that he wants to change. Yeah, and so then after the mixes are done, they get sent off for mastering. And that usually goes to a different audio engineer, John. Mastering is like an art in and of itself, an art and a science. And yeah, so the mastering engineer has their way with it, makes everything sound like a uniform volume. So all the songs on the record are roughly in the same place volume-wise. And then they also make it so that the record as a whole more or less matches the volume of other work in that genre. So they might go listen to like Brandi Carlile or Sean Colvin or whatever, and like try and match those volumes so that when you're listening on Spotify, it's not gonna, or wherever you listen to music, you're not gonna have to like adjust your volume in a big way, or hopefully at all.
When you first go see your producer, do you already have some of those arrangement ideas, or do you wait until you're in there and you talk about it together?
Usually the latter. Usually, John is sort of a wizard that way, and he pretty quickly has a vision of what a song what a soundscape could sound like. I might have some ideas about, oh, I want this one to have more of a rock feel to it, with some electric guitars and like electric bass and some rock and drums. I'll certainly come to it with those kind of ideas on some songs, but other songs like, okay, like Heart on a Wire, I knew that I wanted some sort of ethereal, moody electric guitars and keys in there. And well, really, we did more of that with the guitars than the keys on that song. Um, yeah, so I came to it with sort of that vague notion, and John ran with it, like he did some electric guitar with like an ebow,
Oh,
and
those are fun.
I think he used an ebow on that one. Yeah, and then man, he came in and played baritone electric guitar all over this record. And I just think that added so much depth and really like emotion to a lot of the songs. And so like Old Farmhouse is a song where he that one, the production on that one is interesting. I'm going off a little bit on a tangent here, but the production on that one is interesting because the song is about nostalgia for this place, this like old family farmhouse. It's mostly a fictional story. It's based on one real location in my life, but it's mostly fictional. Um, but yeah, it's about nostalgia for place and sort of a location where there was a lot of family history, and um, the production sort of bridges has one foot in each world of like old sort of country instruments. There's banjo, there's accordion, there's acoustic guitar, and then the other foot is in the more modern world, just like in the song. So you've got John playing electric baritone guitar, and you've got some other like more modern sounding instruments. And so I don't know. I thought that was super cool.
The team that you have for the record, how many of these folks do you get to take with you when you do shows?
99% of the time I'm playing solo when I do
So
a show.
this gives me the question, how does what you've done with the songs to get them on the record affect the way you perform them solo? Because from the time you wrote it by
Mm.
yourself, then they go through this whole process, and then if you're going to play solo, you're back to by yourself. Does any of the things that you've done for the recording seep into your live performances?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So another thing that John and I work together on is maybe he hears like we were just talking about in Call My Heart Home, he recommended that I cut a verse,
Yep.
an entire verse. And so I did, and it made the song better. And so that's how I play it now. Similarly with gosh, back to Old Farmhouse, that song changed a lot in the recording process. I mean, I when I first played it for him and we first recorded a scratch demo, he felt like there wasn't enough variation musically between the chord progression for the verse and the chord progression for the chorus. So he gave me that feedback, and I went home like that day and worked on it and worked on it and worked on it until I got it to a place where those were more musically distinct sections of the song. And then I wrote a bridge. I totally changed up the bridge. Or maybe I turned a verse into a bridge because it needed a bridge. And the whatever I had there just wasn't working. And John was like, "You really need to change this. Let's shorten it and make it more musically distinct from the other two sections of the song." And so that's how that bridge was born. Yeah, and so that's how I play it now. Like that is the song now. It's sort of baked in. And then musically, like sometimes maybe on the recording I'll strum the guitar in a different way to make space for other instruments to come in. I tend to be a pretty busy strummer when I'm doing a strummy guitar song with lots of like fills and stuff like that I'm doing in my right hand. Um, and or my strumming hand. And now there are certain songs where I'm kind of a little more chill and I leave more space, even though even when I'm playing solo, it just sounds better, for whatever reason. But all that said, I did play with a full band for my album release show, and that was super, super fun.
It's always kind of yeah, it's always fun to play with other people, isn't it?
Oh, it's a blast. I mean, it was also a little bit nerve-wracking for me because I had never done that before. Again, like I've come to back to music sort of late in my life, and And a lot of it was during the worst years of the pandemic. And so it was really only this year that I got to even have a live in-person album release show. When my first album came out, I did a online album release show, like a live stream. Um, and so it was really a treat to get to do a live in-person album release show this time. And I really wanted to do it up and use that opportunity to play with a full band. And so that was a blast. And everyone that was in the band was a total pro and, brought their best A game to it and made it really pretty easy and fun for me. We had 2 rehearsals and they nailed it at the show.
Nice.
So, yeah.
I always like to say my favorite shows are when I'm the least talented musician in my own band.
Totally.
Like, the people I get, if they're all better than me, that's so much more fun.
Amen to that. I love it. And they force you to raise your game.
Yes.
Which is really great. So
if people want to get this on CD, where do they go?
my Bandcamp page or my website, which is just carolynshulman.com. And then there are links where you can buy it and that'll take you to the Bandcamp page, which is, I just use Bandcamp for the financial transaction part of it. Yeah. And I would love to send anyone who wants one a signed CD.
Fantastic. We will repeat that at the end. Now it is time for the 2 questions I ask everyone. So not that you're not special, Carolyn, because you are. But there are 2 questions I ask every guest. The first of which is, I'd like you to think back as far in the past as you can to when you were a little girl. What is the first song you can remember hearing in your life?
Whoa, that's such a cool question. I just got chills. It's also really hard.
Yes. Take your time. If you take too long, I can just edit it out. So it's no big deal.
I mean, I feel like it was probably like a children's song. I feel like, what's that song? You would think I would just know, right? What's that song about Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring?
There's also a mockingbird in that song, isn't there?
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called, but my mom never sang it to me, but I have heard it.
Yeah, I feel like that one, I don't know, my mom might hear this and be like, no, but I feel like I have a very vague, sort of misty, foggy memory of being like in my crib in the first house that my family lived in after I was born. And we moved when I was 3. But I can still sort of see where my crib was and the window, and I can hear that song being sung to me.
Well, that's pretty cool.
That's kind of creepy, maybe, but I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's it. And then, I mean, I certainly have like songs that I remember that are more like pop songs that I remember from, but those are probably from when I was a little older, like a toddler.
What are those?
I was super into Michael Jackson when I was really young.
Everybody was, because
Yeah.
King of Pop for a reason, right?
Yeah, well, in Gen X, I mean,
Yeah.
I think you're Gen X like me.
I
I'm
am.
right on the cusp, but I certainly identify. I was born December 1980, but I certainly identify as Gen X. I feel like culturally, that's where I sit.
Yeah. I'm a 77 baby, so I'm also, Gen X.
Yeah, nice, right there. And yeah, so I remember like the whole Thriller album. Like I remember singing PYT with my cousins and doing a whole dance routine to it at the beach. Like it was like we have it on old VHS tape somewhere.
Nice.
Some people listening might be like, "What's VHS tape?"
Right. Right. We don't need to explain it to the Gen Alpha
No.
people. They can
Google it.
They can Google it, right? We did not have that option when we were children.
Didn't.
They have that option. So since we're talking about children, this leads to the next question, which I stole from a defunct podcast here in Dayton, which I still miss. That question is, what did your childhood smell like?
What did probably like fresh mowed grass? I don't know. That comes to mind.
Who was mowing?
Oh, probably not my dad. I don't know. They probably like hired someone to do it. He's not a yard work kind of guy. But maybe in those early years he was doing it himself. Or just, just like in the neighborhood, maybe my mom would take me for a walk and that would be the smell. Um, Also just sort of the humid air of Mobile, Alabama, where I grew up.
You don't sound like you're from a place like Mobile, Alabama.
I get that a lot. But my accent thickens up whenever I go home or when my parents come to visit.
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
I think I lost it a little bit living in Houston for so long because Houston, despite being in Texas, is a pretty metropolitan
Yep.
place. And you have people from all over that live there. It's an extremely diverse city. It's one of the most diverse cities in the country.
You mentioned you went to school there. Was that Houston or was that Rice or which
Yeah, both.
both? Wow.
Yeah, I went to undergrad at Rice, and then I went to law school at University of Houston.
All right. I
Yeah.
I've never been to Houston, but
Oh.
I want to for two reasons. One, I have some friends that live down there. And two, I've heard that after Katrina, a lot of folks from the Bayou
Hmm.
moved to Houston, and
Correct.
Houston has a very large Vietnamese population, and those two
Yes.
cultures' cuisines have combined to make something called Viet Cajun. And I feel like
Oh,
I need that in my life. So even though I
it.
have, you know,
I miss it. I'm Houston, man. The food scene in Houston, and I know you're such a foodie. You gotta go to Houston. There are things there that you just won't find anywhere else. That's a great example. There's also a lot of like other types of Asian cuisine fusing with like Latino cuisine, which I guess you can find that in other places like New York
city's got to be
City,
big
LA.
enough. You're not going to find that here in Ohio, for instance. But
No, but I mean you find a lot of that in Houston. God, the food there is good.
someday, I'm going to make it there someday.
Yeah, it's amazing. You really
Hopefully,
should. It's
hopefully my.
also,
Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry,
Sorry.
didn't mean to talk over you.
No, you talk. You're the guest.
Well, I was just gonna say, like I feel like the restaurants there are a little more affordable than like New York City or LA or Chicago, which are the comparable cities,
Hmm.
because it's the cost of living in Houston is lower, and I mean that's changing, but it's still gonna always be lower than those three cities,
Yeah.
and so you can go, man. I mean, you go out to like you know the part of town where all the Asian restaurants are, and it's, I mean, God, you get some great stuff. Oof, I
Someday.
miss it.
You're in your band camp. I'm gonna read your blurb that describes you.
Oh gosh, I don't know if I've updated that.
I mean, I'm sure none of this has changed.
Yeah.
Folk in America singer songwriter. That's still you, right?
Folk, yeah, Americana, yeah.
Guitar nerd,
Totally.
whiskey enthusiast,
Uh-huh.
mom,
Still a mom.
believer that music can change lives.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, so you don't have to change it. I want you to tell me about your favorite whiskeys, and this is specifically for my wife, who is very much a whiskey enthusiast. I was not until later. I'm working on it, but I am not nearly as well versed nor as crazy about whiskeys as her.
Mm.
And I know she listens to all of my podcasts, so she is going to want to hear another whiskey enthusiast wax poetic about what her favorite drinks are.
Oh, nice. What's her name?
Misty.
Misty. Well, Misty, I hope that we get to have a drink together sometime. Um, yeah, so my dad got me into whiskey, I'll say for starters, and he is super into single malt scotch. So that was kind of where well, yeah. I mean, I kind of started with more like I think the first whiskey I probably ever had was either like Maker's Mark or that what's the Canadian one?
Crown?
Yeah, Crown Royal. Um, and but I went from that to my dad was like, "Oh no, you gotta, if you want to get into whiskey, daughter, I can help you with that." And so what would the question was, what are some of my favorites?
Yes.
Yeah, I love a good peated single malt scotch. So like Lafroig, I have a couple of bottles of Lafroig 18 year, which is no longer in production as far as I know. But my dad like kind of stockpiled some bottles of it and gave me a couple of them. And so that has become sort of my special occasion scotch. that I'll drink when I'm celebrating something because I kind of want to save it, like it's so good. It's like mellow, but also has that peat flavor that a lot of Isla malts are known for. And so I love that. Oh, and it's also, I think it's aged in a sherry cask, which gives
Hmm.
it like a little bit of sweetness, and makes it very drinkable. It's not as harsh as like the 10 year. And the 10 year is not even that harsh, but it's certainly a little the 18 year is just a delightful experience. I also like uh Highland malts, which tend to not be peated. They can be, but they typically are not. So like that's like your Macallan. Um, love those. I have a bottle of Macallan 12 year. Um, it's delicious. And then I also love rye whiskey. So my favorite rye right now, I maybe have two. I love Pikesville rye. It's a higher proof, and it is just spicy and delicious. And I like it with just like one large ice cube. I take my scotch neat, if I'm drinking single malt. If I'm drinking a blended scotch, I'll maybe put some ice in it. But single malt scotch, I always drink neat. Rye, I typically will enjoy putting like one big rock in there that melts like slowly, but kind of takes a little bit of the edge off of it. And rye is great because it's a little spicy. It's got a little more spicy characteristic to it. And then my other favorite rye is actually distilled by a friend of mine. His name is Adam Dorfman. The company is called Short Barrel. And they started off making bourbon. They're based in Georgia. They started off making bourbon, and now they've branched out into rye and some other liquors. And their rye, I think it's called Rye 101, and it is so good. And it's called 101 because it's 101 proof.
Nice.
Yeah. It's a great whiskey. You can buy it online. I highly recommend it. Go support my friend Adam's business.
She will. I am sure
Yeah.
she will. She likes to try different whiskey. So there you go, Misty. I know you're listening probably a week after this has been out. You have things on your shopping list. Let us reiterate where folks can find you online. Your official website is carolynshulman.com. That is CarolynShulman.com. Right?
Nailed it. Yes.
Your Bandcamp site is Carolyn Shulman, same spelling, .bandcamp.com. And where can folks find you on the social medias?
I'm on Instagram as same spelling Carolyn Schulman Music is my handle on Instagram and Facebook. And then I'm on YouTube. It's just youtube.com/Carolyn Schulman. Those are the main ones I would say. I don't really do TikTok. I mean, I'm on there, but mostly so I can watch other people's videos. I don't make TikToks. And Twitter or X, I guess is now called.
Yeah, I'm
Again,
never calling it that.
no, I'm more of, it's so dumb. I'm more of a lurker on Twitter.
It
I
is
don't,
definitely not nearly as cool as it used to be.
it kind of, it's not great. It's not great. It's a dumpster fire out there. Um,
But sometimes you can't look away from a dumpster fire.
right. Yeah, I know. And then Threads, I have a Threads account now, but I don't post a ton on Threads. Mostly use it to read what other people are saying.
So Head on a Wire or Heart on a Wire was out September 20th. You can get that on Carolyn's website. Get the hard copy if you're of our generation because we like hard copies. If you're young
Yes.
and don't have a CD player, it is available on all streaming services. I listened to it. It's very good. When you listen to it, actually listen to the lyrics. Again, I talked about this earlier, and I know a lot of people don't, but you really kind of want to on this one. Any final words for the listeners there, Carolyn?
No, thank you so much, Mike, for having me on your show. And you guys listening need to go out and listen to Mike Bankhead's music because it is awesome. His album, I Am Experienced, is fantastic and just a really cool concept. So,
What a
I hope,
nice thing for you to say. Thanks, Carolyn.
well, I say it because it's true. And I just really appreciate you having me on today. This is a delightful conversation.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much again to Carolyn for taking time from her busy schedule to talk to me. Dear listener, you can go listen to Heart on a Wire right now, as we mentioned, on all streaming services. And if you want the CD, you can visit her official website or her Bandcamp page. Support independent artists and give Carolyn's wonderful new album a listen. Yeah, I think you should do that. Also, dear listener, thank you again for listening to episode 119 of the You Could Be My Aramis podcast. I'll be back your way next week with another chat with another musician. Bye.